And I know that it may sound maybe a little hard, but think of it, museum professionals are not professionals that get the highest salaries, for instance, in the world, right? And you can't compare their salaries to bank managers, say. But they keep materials that are invaluable. And it is not just about maybe the director being strict or maybe one having a high responsible position in the institution, but it's about somebody's inner ethics. You know, as curators, for instance, we have almost unlimited access to our collections. And you can shift one object from one place to the other with very little or no control or opposition by anyone in the museums, isn't it, Madam Bella? And so, you must be a person that is responsible enough to know that this cultural material or good that is here is for the country, and not for today's people, but for our children, our children's children. You are a custodian of this cultural aspect for posterity of your nation. Not only of your nation, but for the whole world. So, you need to adhere to these ethics. And that's why we make it a point as ICOM that every member must adhere to this. But because of its importance, it's not just in key languages like maybe English, French, Spanish. It is interpreted in many languages, and over 38 languages you will find the ICOM code interpreted in. And the ICOM code of ethics is enshrined in some countries' law. There are some countries that even when they talk about cultural heritage protection, they even cite some aspects of the ICOM code in them. And today also, Caroline, I don't know whether you said this at the beginning of first day, the 2015 recommendation, UNESCO recommendation on, yeah, it's also one of the important aspects that was done by UNESCO to make recommendation for promotion of museums and their collections and their role in the diversity and their roles in society in promoting peace. For the ICOM code, the principles, as it is said there, are basically accepted internationally and they are simple and easy to understand, as you can see there, and the guidelines are there with explanations that make you understand what they are. And if you go through the principles, you will find the principle of acquiring collections, and it is important. Most museums must have an acquisition policy of how they will collect these particular collections. I did hear, I'm not sure whether it was today or yesterday, where there was an aspect of due diligence being talked about. Was it Maria talking about this? Or yeah, or Marina, yes. These are aspects that a museum professional must always care about. It's not a matter of just going and seeing some object, especially objects that we acquire sometimes from people that just walk into the museum and want to have these particular things given to the museum. We have to check all these things, to check where they are coming from. Are they, these aspects we are collecting, is it legal for us to collect them, and so on. And you'll find, if you read through the code, that explains to you what it must be. And there it says in the 2.3, every effort must be made before acquisition to ensure that any object or specimen. When we talk of specimen, usually we usually mean the natural history collections offered for purchase, gift, loan, bequest, or exchange has not been illegally obtained in or exported from its country of origin or intermediate country. For instance, here in Seychelles, I'm not certain if you have a snake called python. Do you?
No.
You don't have, right? In my country, we have pythons. There are many of them. And somebody could bring something like this to ask if you would like to have it in your museum and you're excited. But if you come to my country, a python is a protected species. And if this person was not caught along the way, and there are international laws that try to stop this, and Maria talked about one of them. This is CITES, doesn't allow this illegal export of endangered species. If somebody is not caught by any chance through this particular instrument, you as a museum professional, it is your role to do the due diligence check. If this aspect that is, or this material that is being brought to you as a museum professional is not illegal. So, talking about due diligence, there are those questions that we ask: is it authentic? Is it legal? Is it ethical? We mentioned those. And talking still about due diligence, you have to think, what is it? Due diligence is the requirement that every endeavor is made to establish the facts of a case before deciding a course of action, particularly in identifying the source and history of an item offered for acquisition or use before acquiring it. And the provenance is a statement that we have heard around here. This is the full history and ownership of an item from the time of its discovery or its creation to the present day, through which authenticity and ownership are determined. You also have to establish the origin of collections, and there we have a nice statement that says museums should promote the sharing of knowledge, documentation, collections with museums and cultural organizations in the countries and communities of origin. And the possibility of developing partnerships with museums in countries or areas that have lost significant part of their heritage should be explored. This is one of the key roles of ICOM, and want museums to always promote cooperation. We cannot fight illicit trafficking alone as institutions. And for many years, institutions have been operating in silos. Each institution has its own framework of dealing with things. But since 2 decades ago or so, we all realized the importance of cooperating. And even museums today, other than illicit trafficking, in other aspects too, realize, we are related to institutions like libraries. At some time, we used to think, libraries are different to cultural heritage and things like this. And we talk about intellectual properties, the issues of exceptions of these things. I can see our colleague from the Seychelles is nodding, now sees the importance of us as museums to cooperate. And we have to cooperate when it comes to protection of our cultural property and talking about restitution and things like that. We are cooperating as organizations, as museums, as institutions, as individuals, to help see and progress in this particular manner. I'll skip the sections. When we come to the legal framework, the national and local legislation, there is an important statement there that says museums should conform to all national and local laws and respect the legislation of other states as they affect their operation. I gave an example of an aspect or of a material that may come from another country and come to you as a museum professional. Can you acquire it? You have to do your roles as a museum professional and check that, is this thing legal? Is it ethical? Should I acquire it or not? When you have done that and checked all the laws, then you know that I can acquire this, it is legal or not legal. We have two lawyers behind us there, and they say something in law that ignorance is not what, Marina? Before the law? It's no excuse, right?
No, I have it in French. Nobody is allowed to ignore the law.
Yes, of course. And when it catches up with you, there is no excuse. Right? And here, we have some examples of policies, laws, codes that we have to adhere and that we think everyone must be connected to. And some of these we have heard, the 1954. And Marina there is always interested. She talks, sleeps, dreams about 1995 convention. That's part of her. She can sing it to you when she's half asleep. And that's very true, actually. It's not meant to be a joke. Oh, well, I'm joking. So we have all these conventions that are very important for everyone. And even when they are here, please take time to read them. I know some of this material, Madam Caroline has been generous enough to put them for us in USB. Maybe we will move with them. But if you can't, please just go to UNESCO website and find these conventions, find time to read them, try to read widely, see what others have. So what tools do we have as ICOM to curb this illicit traffic? There is Object ID. I will not talk much about it because we have done this particular exercise, but I want to re-emphasize the statement I said at the beginning when we were doing the exercise, that it is very important that we learn, as especially for museum professionals, to document our collections. If your collections are not documented, you have no right of ownership. I think yesterday somebody did mention, one of the presenters, that sometimes museums don't report the thefts of cultural heritage that they have experienced in their museum. And always the question is, why don't they want to report? Of course, there is a reason. Sometimes they don't want to tarnish their own image. You can imagine if you are the director of the museum, there is a theft today, you go, no, they've stolen this. After 2 weeks, they steal another thing, they have stolen that. What will your minister do? Say, fire them. They're not good enough, right? But that is one aspect. But one of the major reasons I know as a museum professional why they do not report these thefts is because these objects that are under their custody are not properly documented. And we usually give documentation not a priority, it's always stayed forth in the museum world. But to the museum professionals, we are museum professionals because of the objects that are entrusted in our custody. And they are not there for us as curators, but we keep this for our nation. And we keep them not only for our nation, but these materials are for the world. Because as much as they may be for Seychelles, but they make a contribution of who we are as a people in the world. And that's why we have organizations like UNESCO getting concerned about this. Because if we lose a material in Nicaragua, in Chile, in Argentina, in China or elsewhere, this is an artifact that is stolen from humanity. It is everyone's loss. 5 minutes? Oh, I have to move. So, we have several aspects. We have the object ID that we've talked about. ICOM has the observatory, and one of the things that we have that is produced by ICOM is the ICOM Red List. I will skip the object ID because it was already talked about. There is a website of the observatory that was created by ICOM, and you could go there. What do you find? You find a lot of information and resources that talk about illicit trafficking. That is very important. And also somebody here talked about some publications that are done by ICOM that you find on the website and that are usually free for everyone to access and read about cultural heritage, illicit trafficking of cultural heritage. That's just a page that shows part of the website of the observatory. You will have all these presentations in the key. Please find time to go through and visit that particular website. And there we have also on the website some lists, red lists that have been done by ICOM. That's the observatory still. The red list, I want to talk about this. What is this? It's a practical tool that is used by people from customs, the police, even museum professionals, to see the types of material, of cultural objects that could be prone to illicit trafficking. And I want to underline this. These are vulnerable objects of cultural material that is usually protected by national law. So the list you have red lists before you, it doesn't mean those materials have been stolen, no. But these are materials that you must watch out, that may be prone to be stolen. And ICOM produces this, say, think of a country like Mali. Somebody showed about Timbuktu the other day, and there was a red list that ICOM produced about that and was distributed around the world. And some items have been recovered in different parts of the world because officers could check and say, these are materials that look like from Syria, and they have helped them to recover some of those important materials. So, how are objects identified that should be put on the red list? First of all, there must be the risk. The existent risk must be known. And these are categories of objects that must be part of the heritage of a region where a risk has been identified. And this risk could be war, lack of proper security, and then they could be prone to trafficking. The second one, these particular objects must be protected by law in the countries where they come from. And the third one, of course, is the market. Why would people want to steal a cultural material when they don't have a market? There is no need, right? So there must be something that is pulling, giving the pull effect, and it's always the market. So when these three aspects are satisfied, then ICOM goes ahead to produce those particular red lists. What are they for? Help identify objects exposed for illicit trafficking. 2, facilitates investigations and seizures and arrests. 4, help heritage and art market professionals to identify which are these aspects that are prone to being stolen, and also help the general public and raise awareness about these particular things that may threaten their own heritage. So how does it work? It is given to different people: customs, police, auction houses, collectors, museum professionals, and so on. And where has ICOM produced this red list from? 17 have already been done. For more than 30 countries involved. You will see some of the examples that you have, that there are red lists for regions. Like we have a red list for West Africa that has been done, and for specific countries like Mali and other countries where we've had challenges. And these are some of the most recent red lists. We have just done in 2017 a red list for objects that are at risk in Yemen. And where are they sent? And what has happened? And you see some of the success stories of red lists. Like in Niger and Mali, over 600 statues have been returned to Niger and important pieces to Mali. And that's how successful they have been. Now, I must underline here, although they are written as success stories, we talked about being strong together to fight illicit trafficking, right? And this is not done by ICOM. It is done by colleagues that help. WCO, Interpol, and all others. Without them, these success stories will not happen. In 2020, we will produce a red list for Southeast Europe too. And you can find some of these publications on the ICOM website, and you can download them if you need them. And we have already said where they are distributed usually. And I also want to mention that ICOM also has roles in places where there is disaster. I'll be concluding in the next 2 minutes. I'll try. And in times of a crisis, museum offers professionals that help the local professionals handle these aspects through training programs. And many times it is very, very successful because museums have leeway, especially those that are members of ICOM, to contact ICOM to ask what shall we do about this. And we have under ICOM a committee called DRMC, a Disaster Risk Management Committee that will soon become an international committee, so that many people that are museum professionals that need to know about this and want to get involved can join. And lastly, I want to talk about this. I had said at the beginning that ICOM is a composition of more than 40,000 museum professionals. And every year they have a triannual general conference in different parts of the world after 3 years. And the one in 2016 was in Milan, and the next one comes up in the next 4 or 5 weeks from today, and it's going to be in Kyoto, and the theme of that triannual general conference is museums as cultural hubs, the future of tradition. I thank you.